Dutton, just back to that issue of capability in defence. Yeah. One of the issues flagged by Richard Marles was the AUKUS submarine deal. Has Australia been left with a capability gap because of that deal?
Well, we were, because Labor never commissioned one submarine. There's no ships being built at the moment in South Australia or in Western Australia or anywhere in our country that was commissioned by Labor. That's the reality. And yes, we had a huge gap that was left us by Labor when we came into government, and you don't just create a submarine industry, or you don't just build a frigate overnight. It takes time for the design, it takes time for the build, and we have invested into defence in a way that Labor never did. Now, under the AUKUS arrangement, that is the security underpinning for our nation for the next 4 or 5 decades. If Labor is preparing to walk away from that, which I suspect Richard Marles, at least in part, is planning on doing, then I think he would be doing a great disservice to our country as the Defence Minister. So the advice from the Chief of Navy and the Chief of the Defence Force to me when I was the Defence Minister was that we don't have that gap because we have a life of type extension for the Collins-class submarines, and the thought that Richard Marles could design a new Collins-class submarine with a new vertical launch system or a new weapon system and have that boat in the water by 2030 is a complete absurdity. And I think he's preparing the ground to walk away from the nuclear submarine program, which I think would be a travesty. We have an incredible relationship with the United States and the United Kingdom. They haven't shared the nuclear technology with any other country since the 1950s, and they won't share it with another country. So we have a unique opportunity, and if Labor is crab walking away from the AUKUS deal, I don't think, given the situation in the Indo-Pacific at the moment, that is in our country's best interest, and they should reconsider it.
On what basis are you making that claim, though, Mr Dutton?
Well, there's constant talk that there's a capability gap and that it's too long before you get the nuclear submarines. I've seen this sort of political talk before from Labor, and I can tell you they'll be looking at the figures where there's a considerable expense, not just over the forward estimates, but particularly in the out years over the next decade and beyond, and they would be saying, well, we can't afford to do that, and how do we get out of it? And that is not a choice that the Labor Party should be contemplating, because you need that capability, and to defend our country, particularly in uncertain times, you need to invest in the Australian Defence Force and the equipment that they have, and it takes time to get the equipment. I've detailed how I think we can get that investment in submarines underway more quickly, and that Labor would be seeking to walk away from that, I think is something that Mr Marles should be very clear about, instead of this double talk that he's undertaking at the moment.
A question on paid parental leave for dads, something that your government had in the budget in regards to 20 weeks for dads. Labor's now looking to implement it, potentially how they might implement it. What's your reaction to that, and why do you think your government thought it was a good idea?
Well, I'd just be very, very clear about this, and I've made this comment since I've been the leader of the party. We'll support constructive policies and policies that make sense, and families are dynamic. Mum or a dad or whatever the dynamic of the family is means that you do have to have flexibility, and we supported that in childcare. We supported it through paid parental leave, etc. And a lot of this has already happened whilst we've been in government. And if the Albanese government has sensible policy to propose, we'll support that. It's just got to be done in a way that doesn't price people out of a job if employers decide that the on-cost is too expensive or the flexibility is too difficult in their workplace. We've just got to accept that. We're also coming into a very tight economic situation over the course of the next couple of years. The projections in relation to inflation, the government's obviously got a lot of money that they're planning on spending. They've been warned by the ratings agency that if they spend the money that they had proposed to spend, that would put upward pressure on interest rates, and it would make it more expensive for government to service its debt if the ratings agencies drop Australia's credit rating down. So there's a fine balance here, and we'll look at what the government's proposing, but we've always supported that flexibility and provided support to families to deal with the reality of children and what that means in terms of career progression, etc.